Good afternoon to my YouTube Live audience. Glad to see you on this beautiful Tuesday, October 18th. This is my 20th YouTube Live. Glad to see everybody here. Wanted to talk about a few things, including this interesting book I just bought from the Sankofa bookstore on Georgia Avenue across from Howard University. C.L.R. James, and he was a professor right here in DC. And this just came out. It's published by AK Press, and it's called You Don't Play with Revolution, the Montreal Lectures of C.L.R. James, edited by David Austin. It includes a preface by Robert Hill, who Austin writes is what I discovered, the literary executor of C.L.R. James. Robert Hill is also the editor of the Marcus Garvey papers in California. But yes, glad to be back after a few days. There's a particular thing that happened that is on the anniversary. Today is October 18th. Excuse me, 2 days prior, October 16th, marked what would be the 55th anniversary, 54th anniversary of what was called the Rodney riots in Jamaica. And what I like about this collection is that it has C.L.R. James's response to Dr. Walter Rodney being banned from Jamaica, the government that was very pro-British, very pro-Queen, very pro-US, cooperated to make sure that Dr. Walter Rodney would not be able to teach at the University of the West Indies. And there was a whole revolt about it. There was a whole revolt about it. By the way, if you're learning something, please like, share, comment. Comments are welcome on this live YouTube. I usually don't do the live YouTubes in the morning or the early afternoon, but schedule got switched around. And so if you are seeing this now, feel free to like, feel free to share, feel free to comment. Comments are welcome. Comments are welcome. So I wanted to really look up and talk about the meaning of what C.L.R. James said about Walter Rodney being banned October 16th, 1968. 1968. And what's interesting in this book, if you look at the table of contents, towards the end in the back of the book, it includes what exactly C.L.R. James says. Shout out also, what I discovered, I just read the introduction, and I learned in the introduction, written by David Austin, who edited this collection, was that Jimmy Garrett, who helped found Black Studies at San Francisco State University, the same year the riots in Jamaica, in Kingston, Jamaica in October happened to support Dr. Walter Rodney. That was the same year that the first Black Studies department at San Francisco State University was founded by the work of Jimmy Garrett. And what David Austin writes is that later on, David Austin writes that Jimmy Garrett was responsible for C.L.R. James teaching at the University of the District of Columbia. And the first time I came to DC in my life was when I was, I believe it was 2007, 2008. I traveled to DC and I took the metro, and the first destination I went to was UDC, because then the Progressive Democrats of America, who was running, that Tim Carpenter founded, was doing an event at UDC. And I found out through word of mouth that C.L.R. James taught at University of the District of Columbia because of Jimmy Garrett, So thank you to Jimmy Garrett for getting C.L.R. James at UDC. What a different world we live in now. What a different academic world that is, seems almost hostile to ideas like C.L.R. James today in today's academia. But I just want to look at what C.L.R. James said about Walter Rodney being banned from Jamaica. And he says in this first full sentence on 381, it is not going to stop there. They continue to misgovern the country, and already we see in Jamaica, and I am saying this is going to happen all over the Caribbean, a violent confrontation between the backward reactionary government that is still living in the 17th century with a population that is part of the 20th century. And we see this most recently in the Prime Minister Andrew Holness's um, declaration that he will want 12 days of mourning for Queen Elizabeth, who died this year, 2022. That's an example of a government, as C.L.R. James writes, that is still living in the 17th century with a population that is part of the 20th century. That is a problem that is going to explode all over the Caribbean. We must be ready for it. Before I sit down, I want to bring one more point to you, and this is something that I was told by a man for whom I have the greatest personal respect and affection, George Laming, who I discussed on a previous YouTube live when he passed this year. He told me this story, and he told it to me with a significant purpose in mind. George was in Barbados, his home country, and Frank Walcott, head of the trade union movement, asked him to speak to the trade unionists. So all the trade unionists heard Mr. Laming, a great writer, was going to speak. There were thousands of them, and they had to put loudspeakers outside. C.L.R. James writes, and George spoke. He spoke about the conference in Berlin. He was speaking about Black people and how in Berlin, Bismarck beat them back and European governments divided up Africa. That is for me and that is for you, and you take that. And he, Laming, drew the development from these days up to 1958 when there took place the first conference of the independent African states. George spoke about the development of the Negro people, the Barbadian people of African independence, etc. There was tremendous applause, a great deal of excitement and enthusiasm. George went back home. George never made any sort of reference to any Barbadian politicians. He did not say he wished to stay in Barbados to make politics. And so he's bringing up, C.L.R. James here is bringing up George Laming to make the point about how um, unfair it was for Walter Rodney to be deported and not allowed back because of what C.L.R. James describes as reactionary governments. Reactionary governments. I wanted to look at my earlier IG post. This is a post from my IG about 4 years ago. 4 years ago was the 50th anniversary of Walter Rodney being banned by the then Jamaican government, particularly Hugh Shearer, from speaking in Jamaica because of Rodney's ideas, which I do want to take a look at. And so this is a headline from The Gleaner did a 50th anniversary special in 2018, which I put on my IG about 4 years ago, 4 years ago exactly to this day, on October 16th, 2018. On social media, the Jamaica Gleaner reported their coverage 50 years ago from that day, October 16, 2018, the banning by the Jamaican government of Walter Rodney. And these are the UE students who protested that banning of Walter Rodney. And they quoted Walter Rodney say, "I believe that in Jamaica to be a Black man is dangerous." And the caption says, "Students of the University of the West Indies," this is in 68, "as they march past Gordon House on Duke Street on Wednesday, October 16, 1968, to protest the government's action to ban Dr. Walter Rodney, a history lecturer at the University of the West Indies from the island." From the island. I wanted to shout out to those watching. If you're just watching this, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you're learning something that you did not know before, don't hesitate to support my Cash App, which is $Roan Fraser. My Cash App is $Roan Fraser. I wanted to shout out to my cousin Jason Lati for giving me this book, The Groundings with My Brothers. And shout out to really the amazing introduction to this book that was written by Jessica Huntley and Eric Huntley. I want, they really understood and had a theoretical attachment and an emotional connection and a deep intellectual respect for Dr. Walter Rodney. And when I say they, I mean the publishers at Bogle Overture Press, Jessica Huntley and Eric Huntley. Wow. what a respectful introduction. And they have a second introduction. They have a newer introduction because this copy came from my cousin, and this second introduction is in only the 1990 version of the Groundings with My Brothers. But this gives you an idea on the content of what Dr. Walter Rodney taught in Kingston, Jamaica, and how he was teaching, I believe, the Rastafarian perspective, even though he was not a um, self-acknowledged Rasta. He taught. It's clear that Dr. Rodney, taught from that perspective. I wanted to look at one page of what Dr. Walter Rodney taught in Jamaica, and this is from the book Groundings with My Brothers. This is and the section I want to read is chapter 3. Chapter 3 is entitled. Let me get this right. This chapter 3 is entitled Black Power and its Relevance to the West Indies. Just want to look at one page here. See if I can get this bigger. Let us have a look at our present position, Dr. Walter Rodney writes. Most of us who have studied at the UE are discernibly Black, and yet we are undeniably part of the white imperialist system, Rodney writes. A few are actively pro imperialists. They have no confidence in anything that is not white. They will talk nonsense about Black people being lazy, the same nonsense which was said about the Jamaican Black man after emancipation. Now he's talking about the newspapers since the late 1800s and the attitudes they would suggest about Black men in Jamaica. Although he went to Panama and performed the giant task, Rodney's talking about the Jamaican Black man, of building the Panama Canal. And he's also describing my great grandfather, Isola Ramsey's husband, Mackenzie, father rather, my great great grandfather, who literally went to work on the Panama Canal. And my play about Amy Ashwood Garvey is an homage to him, and how his labor helped produce the financial largesse this country enjoys today because of the commerce that was opened up between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans when the Panama Canal was built. Walter Rodney writes, although he went to Panama and performed the great task of building the Panama Canal, the same nonsense which is said about WI unemployed today, the West Indian unemployed today, and yet they proceed to England to run die whole transport system. Run the whole. I think that should DIE should say THE. Most of us do not go to quite the same extremes in denigrating ourselves and our Black brothers, but we say nothing against the system, very true, and that means that we are acquiescing to the exploitation of our brethren. One of the ways that the situation has persisted, especially in recent times, is that it has given a few individuals like you and I, he's talking now to college students, a vision of personal progress measured in terms of front lawn and the latest model of a huge American car, right? And so, should that be the goal? That is very much in line with what Bobby Seale, the Libran whose birthday is this week, said about the Black Panther Party is against decadence. And the Black Panther Party come from Malcolm, which come from Garvey, right? It's not against white people because of their skin color. Black Panther Party members believe white lives matter. It's more against the values promoted by the society, which, as Rodney reminds us, is about having a big front lawn and a big American car. This, Rodney writes, has recruited us into their ranks. He's now talking about colleges creating a bourgeois class and deprive the Black names of articulate leadership, not the leadership that is from the currently dominant group, but leaders from our own culture. Rodney's getting us to look at. That is why at the outset, I stress that our choice to remain as part of the white system or to break with it, Rodney writes, there is no other alternative. There is no other alternative. So that was in the book, The Groundings with My Brothers. Okay. Powerful words. Do I think Hugh Shearer was justified in banning Walter Rodney? No. but the fact that he was, and the fact that it was covered so articulately, meticulously by the Jamaica Gleaner is something we should all study and know our history. Um, know our history. And this is definitely an homage. Thank you again to David Austin for um, covering this, including in this book, C.L.R. James' comments on banning Hugh Shearer banning Walter Rodney from Jamaica, and how, as C.L.R. James says, it is proof of a very real reactionary government, a very real reactionary government in Jamaica that wanted him banned. But his words can be still undeniable. We can read his words today and appreciate the power of his language, and still receive the message that Hugh Shearer wanted to stop. You know, we can still receive it today in book form. So we're grateful for it. A lot of news about Kanye, a lot of news, negative news. I do want to caution all of my viewers not to become emotionally manipulated by the coverage of Kanye, because for me, I immediately think of Toni Morrison's book, Birth of a Nationhood, where she talks about and questions really the popularity of the O.J. Simpson trial. Why is this trial being covered so heavily? She asked in the 90s. And I believe that the whole coverage of Kanye and Kim Kardashian is a descendant of that 90s experience of the O.J. trial, because Bob Kardashian was one of O.J.'s lawyers. And it just seems um, like Kanye is being attacked for everything he says. Everything Kanye says is being picked apart, and I don't think it's fair. I think it's emotional manipulation, and whoever gets to control the propaganda gets to engage in that kind of manipulation. What Kanye said about slavery is true for artists. As artists, you have to make a difficult choice. And if you choose a certain way, you do become the slave to the corporate music companies. That's not disrespecting Black people. Harvey Levin cannot tell me how to feel about Kanye's comments. I understand, as a Black man, more acutely what Kanye was saying better than Harvey Levin. So Harvey Levin can't tell me what to think about Kanye's comments. So I don't like how Kanye is being covered. I think it is unfair. No, I don't agree with everything Kanye says or does, but I am threatened by people like LeBron James, nor most recently pulling out, stopping their interviews with Kanye. It's unnecessary. And Kanye is being turned into a monster. And I think this is a tragic consequence of him choosing to be with someone like a Kim Kardashian. But ultimately, I don't agree with the coverage, right? And so what I have here is about a four-year old tweet where Bernice King is saying to Cardi B, you know, after Cardi B did a skit that was produced, that Harvey Levin promoted and pushed and kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And so Cardi B apologized, for caricaturing, I believe, caricaturing Coretta Scott King. But I also thought Bernice King should have expected an apology from Harvey Levin, and she didn't ask for one. I think the way that most recently Levin is trying to spin Kanye, trying to pit um, the family of George Floyd against the family of against Kanye West personally is despicable. I don't agree with it. I think it's once again a tragic, pathetic attempt at emotional manipulation that I refuse to join. So yeah, I don't appreciate the way Levin is covering um, what Kanye's words are. Kanye simply said that what he said, and that doesn't mean that he is blaming. See, the way that Levin uses the word blame is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Nothing Kanye said is blaming anybody for anything. But I see quickly how he's being turned into a monster, and I don't like it. And it definitely harkens back to the ways in which, as Walter Rodney wrote, the propaganda by um, the European countries turns the man into a monster. And you saw that with what Hugh Shearer did to Walter Rodney. And you see it also with what uh, Harvey Levin is trying to do with Kanye West. And he seems to be succeeding, and he should not succeed. He should not succeed. Okay. So I just want to make that clear. Like, let's not be emotionally manipulated about Kanye. Yes, he has problems, like all of us. No, he doesn't get along with his child's mother, like many of us, but he's not a monster. And he's trying to use his astounding, rare role as somebody with a lot of money in a responsible way. God has given him a gift not only in the music industry, but in the fashion industry. And he's figuring out how to use his gift responsibly. He should not be monsterized. Okay. The way that in Kim's dad's time, OJ was monsterized. He should not be monsterized. Kanye should not be monsterized. So that's what I think about, this whole kind. Don't allow yourself to be emotionally manipulated, please, because it's old and it's tired. Today is October 18th, a very important day for me as a playwright, who became a playwright because of plays that I saw, because of plays that I read. And one of the plays that really convinced me from a male perspective that I am a playwright is a play that I saw and that I read. I read first and I saw by Ntozake Shange. Ntozake Shange's life is a big lesson for me. I wish I got to meet her in person, but I didn't. But her work really spoke volumes to me. And I'm very grateful for her work. By the way, if you're just watching this, please support my Cash App, $ Roan Fraser. Please like, subscribe, share my YouTube. Comment. I'm not able to see the comments. We don't know what happened to the comment then. I don't know. I'm looking also to see if I can see comments in another place. But please, if you're just joining this, comment. Let me see your comment. I want to talk to you. Share, okay? Share my YouTube, like, subscribe to my YouTube so that every time that I begin posting, I see it and I'm able to see your comment. Okay. Today is October 18th, celebrating Ntozake Shange. She was born in New Jersey on this day in 1948. And here she is with other artists, all of whom I've met personally. And so I thank God that Ntozake Shange sh- shined her light not only through her dancing, because that's how she began as a dancer, through her artistry, through her writing, through her personal interactions with very close and dear personal friends of mine. So from clockwise, from top left, I want to say, yeah, top left, she's there with Professor Kathy Perkins, who I produced a reading of Alice Childress's play Florence with. And Alice Childress just had an off-Broadway production of her play Wedding Band. Alice Childress passed in 94. But Kathy Perkins and I worked on a reading of Alice Childress's play Florence that she wrote in the 50s, her very first play. So here, Ntozake Shange is with Kathy Perkins on the top left. And then Roundabout Theater did Alice Childress's play Trouble in Mind, which is on my IG of me being at that production. So thank you, Ntozake Shange, for showing love to Kathy Perkins, top left. Top right is an amazing photographer named Marcia Wilson, who I also met personally in Brooklyn. Ntozake Shange is with. And if you've ever visited Marcia's home, she has photographs of Maya Angelou, of Amiri Baraka, of Tara McMillan, of Ntozake Shange. So thank you, Ntozake Shange, for showing love to Marcia Wilson. Then on the bottom right, you see Ntozake Shange with Stacey Ann Chin, the incredible poet from Def Poetry Jam, and incredible one-woman show, Mother Struck, which I saw here in DC, starring Stacey Ann Chin. And then in the middle, lower middle, is the incredible playwright Danye Love, Ntozake Shange, standing with Danye Love, whose play 1 and 2 got rave reviews. Jackie Jeffries raved about Danye's play 1 and 2. and I rave about Danye's play Sugar in Our Wounds that I saw on Broadway, and then also most recently Soft that I saw with my dear friend Sojourner. So I love, thank you, Ntozake Shange, for showing love to my dear friend Danye. And then on the lower left is the amazing one woman show artist, Nikki Powerhouse. Nikki Powerhouse is also a performance artist whose show I saw in Philadelphia, where I also met Clay Kane for the first time. She's close friends with Clay Kane. And thank you, Ntozake Shange, for showing the love to Nikki Powerhouse. So much light and love she, Ntozake Shange, brought to the world. And I want to finish this 20th YouTube Live just meditating on what makes Ntozake Shange's work powerful, what makes it unique. When you read her Wikipedia, I noticed that it said her work is in the category of Black feminist, but I believe her work goes beyond feminism, right? Ntozake Shange's work, I believe, goes beyond feminism. If you're just joining us, don't hesitate to support my Cash App. If you've learned something, it's $ Roan Fraser. All right. Just want to look at two particular excerpts of the play that really affected me emotionally by Ntozake Shange. For Colored Girls, the name of the play is For Colored Girls Who've Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough. And it's a play written by and for women, but it has a profound effect on me because of how deeply Ntozake Shange's work goes outside of national boundaries. It is a working class. It fights for Black liberation. Shange was very clear about the importance of figures such as Toussaint Louverture. What I love about Ntozake Shange's work is how Ntozake Shange imagined Toussaint Louverture. And so these 2 pages of the play For Colored Girls Who've Considered Suicide, I love the way she uses Toussaint Louverture and the image of Toussaint Louverture to help her cope with living as the token Black person in a racist society. This is something that was very real in Shange's life when she moved from New Jersey to St. Louis, Missouri. And the bio that I read of her said it was a difficult time in St. Louis because she was facing racism, taunts, attacks from her white classmates, and she tried to get help from her parents. But what I read was she said her parents were too busy being Black. So therefore, the knowledge of Toussaint Louverture and how he liberated Haiti from being a colony, a slave colony of the French, she used that to help her cope and help her survive in all white St. Louis, Missouri. And so I just want to read these 2 sections to articulate how beautifully, as a playwright, she did that. Shange says here was disqualified because Toussaint belonged in the adult reading room. And she puts that in caps because as a little girl, she wasn't supposed to read about Toussaint. And I cried and carried dead Toussaint home in the book. He was dead and living to me because Toussaint and them, they held the citadel against the French. With the spirits of old dead Africans from out of the ground, Toussaint led the army of zombies, walking cannonballs, shooting spirits to free Haiti. And they wasn't slaves no more. Toussaint Louverture, because my secret lover at the age of 8, I entertained him in my bedroom with a flashlight under my covers. Way into the night, we discussed strategies, how to remove white girls from our hopscotch games, and etc. Toussaint was laying in bed with me next to Raggedy Ann the night I decided to run away from my integrated home, integrated street, integrated school. 1955 was not a good year for little Black girls. Toussaint said, let's go to Haiti. Skip ahead to the last. This is the Lady in Brown's section. Are you any kin to him? He don't take no stuff from no white folks. Now she's talking to another Black guy, also named Toussaint. Um, and they got a country all they own. She's telling him about Toussaint, her 8-year-old self. And there ain't no slaves. That silly old boy squinted his face all up. Look at here, girl. I am Toussaint Jones. And I'm looking at you, and I don't take no stuff from no white folks. You don't see none around here, do you? And he sort of pushed out his chest and he said, "Come on, let's go down to the docks and look at the boats." I was real puzzled going down to the docks with my paper bag and my books. I felt Toussaint Louverture sort of leave me, and I was sad till I realized Toussaint Jones wasn't too different from Toussaint Louverture, except the old one was in Haiti, and this one, with me speaking English and eating apples, yeah, Toussaint Jones was all right with me. No telling what all spirits we could move down by the river. And so, thank you, Shange, for showing us what it means to imagine our history to help us survive and thrive. Thank you for watching my 20th YouTube live. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.